All right, we're going to go through the 10 a.m. Excel midterm from fall 2019, and I assume that everybody has gone ahead and downloaded this particular file that was on the wiki. Now, one of the things you want to make sure of, because we've had some problems with students in the past, you want to make sure that you save this in a place where you recognize it. And one of the questions asks you to change the name of the file. So it says mine should be named Gallagher J 10 a.m. because it wants you to use your last name and then first initial. So one of the places where I suggest that you save is not to OneDrive or anything like that, but right to the desktop. So I'm going to say Gallagher J 10 a.m. You want to make sure that you're saving as an Excel workbook, which should be the default because that's how it was saved. And again, I know it's on the desktop, so you want to make 100% sure that you're doing that, that's the file, that's the only file that's around there where you're saving it. It's got the name, click on save, boom, you're good to go. Now the next thing that's asked, super easy to get some points here. You want to enter your name into the first worksheet where there's in B1, B2, and B3. B3 has your section in here. So first name, all right, I'll put that in there. And I'm the 10 a.m. section. All right, so let's go down to the next part here. It says make magic 10 points. So add a new worksheet directly after the worksheet named name and name this worksheet make magic. So, all right, for us to go ahead and do this, we can see where the worksheets are here. If I click on plus, it will create a new worksheet and it adds it right after the worksheet that I'd clicked on. If for some reason you were in a different place, if you drag it, you can move it to different spots. Notice it says sheet 1. I'm dragging it back here, and if I want to rename it, I just double click on the name sheet 1 and I can call this make magic. Perfect. And it says, you and your friends graduate Boston College, you take decent jobs, but you really want to become entrepreneurs. Having built expertise, starting with your digital text projects, and inspired by Adafruit's founder Lamore and Lady Ada Freed, you think that there is a real future in creating a chain of maker spaces that will host classes for kids during the day, paint bar style maker classes for adults at night, and offer courses in wearables, robotics, home automation, programming, 3D, and more. You each kick in $10,000 today, so each kick in $10,000. Let's see, how many of you do you have that are working on this for you and your friends? To you and your 4 friends, so that means $50,000 altogether. That's from your signing bonus. And since you're frugal, I think if you can each contribute $1,000 at the end of each month. So again, there's 5 of you, so that'll be $5,000 at each month. Your superior BC education gives you the confidence that you believe you can earn an average of 10% on your investment. You need $800,000 to open your first Make Magic Makerspace. How long in months will it take all 5 of you to save enough money to open your first storefront of hopefully many and begin living the dream? So first, let's enter the labels for the formulas that we will use in column A. And the first thing that you should do is really sum up what kind of problem are we looking at here. So we need $800,000. So that's going to be our future value. We have that, but we want to find out how long in months it will take. So how long in months is really our number of payments. And if you've got that down, then you can set things up. Now, the order that you enter in, it says enter the labels for columns in A. Doesn't necessarily matter the order, but I'll show you a trick here. As long as you know you're going to do your number of payments in here, which is called NPER, that's going to be one of the labels. And then if we go up and we select on formulas, our financial formulas, because we know this is a financial formula here, and we go down to NPER, well, you actually get the name of the different labels that you have. So you have rate, you have payment, you have PV, so you can write those in right over here on the side. So I'm going to write in rate, rather than put it in here, but I've got rate, payment, PV, FV. So, and we've done them in different orders in class. If you remember the orders that we did them in class too, you can go ahead and put them in that order. So let's say we usually say present value, rate, NPER, which is our number of periods we've got. We have PMT for our payment, our FV for our future value, and then sometimes we have a type in here if that's significant. So now that we've got this over here, these different values, and again, you can rely on Excel even to give you some help. The most important thing, though, is that you can size up which formula you need. Then we want to enter our amounts used in column B and clearly label our answer. So, all right, let's go ahead and do that. So our present value is how much we're going to invest. If you go back and take a look at the problem, well, the problem says each of you is going to kick in $10,000 today. There are 4 friends, so 5 of you all together. So presently we have $50,000, and we'll say negative $50,000 because this is coming out of our wallet. Now, our future value that we want is we want to have $800,000. So that's what we're looking to invest. And the rate that we had in here, we are confident that our skills will allow us to do 10%, will be our annual rate in here. So if we go down and put 10% in here, now you can either type in 10%, or since we're going to be talking about investing monthly, you can say 10% divided by 12, or we can divide 12 as part of entry in the formula. Either one is okay. I'll accept either one. Right now, I'll keep the 10% in here, and we'll just do the division in the formula. Let's see, number of periods that we have in here, that's what we're trying to figure out. And our payment, well, since there are 5 of us and we're each going to kick in we're each going to kick in $1,000 each month, then what we're going to have for our payment is negative $5,000 each month as well. So we're trying to figure out our number of periods in here. A type that we have, we can actually ignore the type that we've got. We're making our investment, and our investment is going to be at the end of the month rather than the beginning of the month, so it would be 0 or nothing in there. But now that we have the number of periods, we go back over here to our formula builder, and we're going to look for NPER, or you could type in NPER and have that show up. And here it is. So what is our rate going to be? I'm going to click on 10%, but remember, we're talking about our monthly rate, so it's important for you to make sure at some point you do a division by 12. So again, you could do it right in the field here, or you could do it as part of the formula. It's nice to do it as part of the formula because if you decide to change the rate here, you can just go ahead and change the rate, and you don't have to worry about the fact that you're impacting in the cell itself, divide by 12. So it's totally fine. For the payment in here, this is going to be this negative 5,000 that we've got. For the present value in here, we want that to be cell B1 that we've got. Our future value number, that's going to be the 800,000, and that's going to be a positive 800,000. And type, we can just go ahead and ignore this. We'll click on done, and we find that we're going to be 92.45 as our number of months. Now, I said clearly labeled, but as long as you had NPER in there for the number of periods, that's fine. Some students did something like this to notify it, or, said answer. You didn't have to do any of that stuff, but there's certainly no points off for being super clear like this. One thing that I would advise you to do too is as long as you're done with a particular activity, just go ahead and save. So Command S or Control S, or under your file menu for Windows, there's a file tab right on the ribbon there, but make sure that you save your stuff regularly. So good. There we got our first one. Then enter the amounts in the formula. We've got that part. We clearly label our answer, so we got that part. Format the dollars in dollars, no cents. Accounting our currency is fine. Clearly indicate negative values, but you can use any format. Percentages should be a single decimal place with a percentage time, and the time in months can be formatted to 1 decimal place. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on my number of periods and my rate, because both of those are supposed to have a single decimal. I'll click on home, and we can go right over here to make sure that we've got a single decimal showing up. So, again, just click left and then right, and there we go. We've got our single up. So this is formatting as percentage, which I don't want it to show as a percentage. So I'm going to go back over here to NPER. Remember, you can always undo if you want to do that, but I also remember that a number can be formatted as general, which gets rid of all of the formatting, and then I can go back over and shrink down so that I've got 1 decimal here as well. Let's see, this is already a $sign, this is a $sign, this is a $sign. I've got no decimal points in here too, so all of my formatting is perfect. I clearly indicated my answer, and it must be constructed in input values in column B so that they can be changed and revised as the answer. So the important thing there is, if we take a look at how we created our formula over on the side, we referred to all of the different cell values, the cell addresses themselves. So we didn't put any hard-coded numbers in here, which is what you want to do, because if we decide, we got more of a bonus than we thought, so we're going to kick in $100,000, you can see how that's going to impact your value in the end. And whoops, see, I entered in the wrong value in here. I should have entered negative $100,000 if I wanted to see, hey, could I do this in different ways? And we can see that dramatically impacts the way that our calculation happens. So that's everything for Make Magic. That's how long it's going to take you. Good work. Hopefully that worked out for you. Now, what do we have next? Number 3 uses the worksheet FANG. It says the talking heads at CNBC and other financial networks regularly refer to the FANG stocks. Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Create a worksheet with some information about these stocks and answer the exercises below. So it says use the worksheet labeled FANG and position it directly to the right of the worksheet named Make Magic to perform the following tasks. So let's see where we are. Here is Make Magic. We already have FANG here because we dragged Make Magic over. And so click on Fang, and let's see what we want to do here. It says calculate the market cap for Facebook in D2. Copy this formula down through D6. So D2 right here is the market cap, and we know from class, here we are, we're applying stuff from one part of class to the other part of class. The market cap formula is the share price. So I type into D2 equals, and then I'll click on B2, and then I'll say star or time asterisk in here, shares in billions for C3. Press enter here, and here is our market cap value in billions. And it says drag this down, so I can either move my cursor over the little square in the lower right hand corner so that it becomes a thick black plus sign and drag it down, or I can double click for autofill to be able to fill it in. Either of those will work. So there's one technique. Here's I can click and drag. Here's the other technique. And there's yet another technique too where you can copy that one cell with a copy, and then you can go down below, highlight those cells and press enter. Boom, it does all of that in there. We've got our market cap. Next thing that we want to do is we want to enter a formula in E2 that calculates Facebook's percentage of the total market cap for all firms. We want to be sure to use absolute references as needed so that when we copy the formula into other cells, you should not use a separate cell for the total market cap. So, all right, let's see how that we do this. For our total market cap for Facebook, so what we want to say in here is we want to say equals first. What percentage is Facebook of the total market cap? Well, we're going to click first on D2 in here. And since I want to drag down, I want D2 to continue to be a relative reference because I want to calculate then Apple's percentage, Amazon's percentage, Netflix percentage, and continue. But what I want to do here is I want to say if this is divided by, it's going to be my total market cap. So I'm going to use the sum function in here. I'm going to say sum up all of these cells, which is cell D2 colon D6. That's my range. And if I put a closing parenthesis in here, we see that we've got the formula. Now, if I drag down here, what will happen is D2 to D6 is going to change as a relative reference, and that is not what I want, because if I click here and drag down, whoops, that's not what I want. If I click in the corner here, when I get a thick black plus sign like this one and drag it down, we see we're not getting a value that we expect to get. And that's because D2 changes to D3, changes to D4, and D6 changes to D7, changes to D8. That's why we want to use an absolute reference, but just for D2 through D6. You could put dollar signs in front of both of these, but what I'm going to do is, on the Mac, I'm going to do a Command T. On Windows, you should be able to use Function Key 4. You can see it puts dollar signs in front of both of these. Now, the thing that I don't want to move is actually 2. So I could have gotten away with a mixed reference in here and put the dollar signs just in front of 2, but I said absolute reference in the section. So if you put a mixed reference or an absolute reference, as long as it works, that's great. So I'll enter in, press enter to accept my formula. Now I can use my fill handle in any of the ways that I showed you to drag down in here. And if we drag down, we should see the change in percentage for all of these. This is the value that we get. We want to format these as a percentage. Our formatting questions come next. It says whichever technique we would like to copy the formula down. We did that. And we want to pretty things up. So format all percentages to show us percentages with 1 decimal values. Dollar signs should be dollar sign with 2 decimal points. And the numeric value should have 3 decimal points. So, all right, let's go ahead and do that. These are going to be percentages. So I'm going to click right on percentage right here. And I want there to be 1 percentage value in here. The dollar sign to 2 decimal points, we've got that already. Let's see, I think we said general are 3 decimal points. Do we have that? Numeric value should have 3 decimal points, so that's formatted automatically too. We don't need to do anything about that. And here's our share price. That's a dollar value as well. So everything is formatted up. It says now go ahead and we want to use bold and italics for everything in column A and all of the cells in row 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the values in column A. I click in A1, hold down my mouse, drag to A6. Then I'm going to hold down the Mac. It's the Command key. On Windows, I believe it's the Control key. And I'm going to click in B1 while holding that Control key down to E1, and that'll allow me to do this irregular highlighting. You could also highlight and do this thing that I'm about to do one at a time on one selection, then another selection, but doing it with a this kind of broken selection in here, or this discontinuous selection, makes it a little faster. So I'm going to click on bold, I'm going to click on italic, and it changes everything that I've highlighted to bold and italic. Then I ask in here, after doing the formatting for bold and italic, put a single line border at the bottom of cells A1 through E1. So if I highlight A1 through E1 here, I'm in my home tab. I can click on, this is my border right here. Shows my border right on the bottom. If that's not showing up, you can pull down here and you can see top border, bottom border, and that'll put the bottom border for you right there. If you click off, you can verify that's how it looks. And then fit the column widths to the appropriate sizes for values in column cells. So everything looks good in mine, but if for some reason things were stretched out, you could either click on them and physically move them, or you could double click and that will move things over here too. So you can see I just do some small adjustments in here, but everything looked fine. There would be no points off if you're just a tiny bit off. But we can go ahead, and I'm just moving my cursor so that it becomes this thick black line with arrows in both directions. You double click and it will auto fit for everything that's selected here. So hopefully you got that, the FANG stocks right, and that was problem number 3. So now let's move on to problem number 4, Amazon Financials from the web. It says add a new worksheet directly after the worksheet named FANG and name this worksheet Amazon. So again, we know how to do this. We've done this already. Here's FANG. We're clicked on it. So when I click on plus, what will happen is it will put just to the right of the FANG worksheet here, so directly after. So I click on plus here. There's the sheet that shows up. I double click on it, and the name for this worksheet should be Amazon. So I type in Amazon after double clicking right on the name, press enter here, and this blank worksheet is now called Amazon. Next up, it says you're called into a strategy session with a board of directors. The board is filled. Half of the directors think that the firm should harvest profits, while the other half believe that the firm should take most excess funds and invest in the future. You understand that the firm's business is dependent on infrastructure and that firms with the largest infrastructure in your market should have scale-based sustainable competitive advantages. That's advantages related to size. To illustrate your point through an example, you show how Amazon could be a far more profitable firm today, but it has chosen instead to invest in infrastructure through capital expenditures, noting that Jeff Bezos is the wealthiest person on the planet. You believe this will persuade your bosses to want to be like Jeff and invest in the future instead of taking profits now. Prepare the table that you're going to use for your persuasive argument by doing the following. First, visit the page to see Amazon's financials. So I give you this website right here. It says do not expand any of the rows by clicking on the plus symbol. So let's go right here and find Amazon's financials. So I'm just going to copy this, but you could type it in directly. I'm going to head over to a browser. See the Amazon Financials page, and so here's where I am. I don't want to expand any other things that might show pluses on them, like these guys. Keep those hidden. And let's see, what do we want to do? Copy all of the values in the statement from the first row labeled fiscal year, January to December, all values in USD millions, through the last row labeled free cash flow. Now, it's important to remember, if you're taking a look at this after the exam, there is a chance that there might be different years that you're looking at in here too, but as of the exam, when my students took the exam the first time here, we see these different values. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab from this particular period right here where it says fiscal year, January through December, and let's just verify. We want to go all the way down to the last row labeled free cash flow. So just so I make sure that free cash flow is here. So here's the fiscal year, starts off, and let's see, where's free cash flow? Look, right at the bottom, there's free cash flow. So there are a bunch of different ways that you can make this selection. You can either click right in front of the F in free cash flow and drag down, or I dragged a little bit, but then what I'm going to do is I lift my finger off of the mouse, I hold down the shift key, I'm going to go click all the way to the end, so you can use either of those techniques, right to the very end here. I've highlighted all of my table. I haven't highlighted too much in here, and I'm going to copy that with a Command C. And let's take a look. It says paste it into your Excel worksheet that you just created named Amazon, starting at cell A1. If the data that you're pasted into column G reads 5-year trends, you should delete that column. If the data shows up in a single column, remember you can use paste special to change how the data is pasted into your worksheet. So let's see what we get when we go in here into our Amazon worksheet. I'm just going to straight up paste with a Command V in here, and oh, everything shows up great. But in case things did not show up great, if they showed up in just a single column, remember you could have gone up here, and I'll do this right now so you can see. I'll say paste, and I'll say paste special, and if you say text, what that will do is it will just take the text and paste it over here too. That would take it out of the single column that was dumping in there and spread it across. So I saw there was a couple of students in here that didn't remember that. Again, that was in your solutions video. You saw that in the video. You might want to go back and reread what was in Netflix and some of the notes that I'd sent you in emails too. You want to make sure that you're getting all of that stuff down, but we've got all of the information that was pasted. Now, if you did it the other way, you had some formatting in here, but we're going to get rid of the formatting when we paste later on, so we'll just ignore that. It does say get rid of this 5-year trend column if you have that show up, so I'm just going to highlight in column G, and then I'm going to right-click in the G in column G when I have this downward pointing arrow here, and one of the options I get is delete, and that just went ahead and that deleted the column. So good, that's done. Now if we go over here, let's see what else we want. Change value A1 from fiscal year is January to December, all values in millions, to just year. So here we are in A1. I want to change this so it just says year. What? Not yes, year. Y-E-A-R. There we go. So that's A1's value changed. Adjust the width of column A1 if needed so that you can read the values in these cells. Remove all rows except the 4 rows labeled year. And net operating cash flow, capital expenditures, and free cash flow. So, all right, let's make sure that I can see stuff in here. So I want year, and then the next thing I want is net operating cash flow. Where is that? That's this one right down here. So I want to get rid of everything in between. Remember, you click on the 3 in here for the first one that we want to delete. Hold down our mouse, drag down to 15 here. Everything that I'm highlighting can now do stuff to, and if I right-click on the numbers in here, I get this falls down here, different things I can do in the menu, and one of them, of course, is delete. So I can see that I've just got rid of those rows by highlighting them, then right-clicking in the numbers and deleting. So we want, we don't want the net income in here, so I'm going to get rid of that. So I should have highlighted that row. I'm going to make sure that I delete that. So net operating income, and then let's see, what's the next thing we want in here? We want capital expenditures, so I'm going to delete these 2 rows right here. I highlight those, right-click, and do a delete. So I got net operating cash flow, capital expenditures, and just straight up capital expenditures, not any of the other ones, and then free cash flow. So that's the very last one. So I'm going to highlight from the row right after capital expenditures, drag down all the way to the bottom, but not highlight free cash flow. Right click, select delete, and now I've got the 3 rows plus the year row. So that's 4 rows in total. And again, I told you should have 4 rows here. Now highlight the data, copy it, and paste it directly below the current data using the paste special command to flip the rows and columns, but do not include the copied data's formatting. And the resulting pasted data should appear as plain text with no formatting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight everything here, and I'm going to copy it. So Command-C or Control-C, or you can just go up under Edit and select Copy. And I'm going to click in cell A5, and I want to paste special. So I specifically say use Paste Special. That's the little pull down under Paste. And if I go to Paste Special, I get a bunch of different options here. Now to flip stuff so that the rows and become columns and the columns become rows, you needed to remember that was called Transpose. So you want to click on Transpose. And if I want to make sure that I paste the stuff in but no formulas, just the values, I can click on Values here. So now when I click on OK, we can see even if you had the formatting that was up here previously, now you've got no formatting. It pasted this stuff in. It's looking perfect. So that's great. The next thing that we want to do is we want to delete the old data so that only the flipped data is showing, with column A being year, showing the 4 end-of-year dates, and column B, C, and D showing net cash operating net operating cash flow, capital expenditures, free cash flow, and our 5 rows and the headers should start with 2014 through 2019. So that's exactly what we see in these rows down here, 2018, I should say. So I want to delete this old data. Again, we know how to delete data. Just highlight the rows themselves and right click and delete, and those go away. Everything else is looking good in here. And it says turn the data into an Excel table with headers and format it so that it looks like the one below. So this is what the one below looks like. And I'd mentioned as well, you don't have to worry about the specific colors in here because you couldn't see them. And even when I tried to show it on the screen, unfortunately the screen didn't even show the colors properly. So as long as you had it as a table and it was, formatted in anything, even the default blue would have been fine. But it says turn the data into an Excel table with this format, so great, there we go. And it says the bars are pale green. The year column should be only 4 digits, and the values copied in the worksheets are text, since they should have a B next to them, but that's totally okay, and then we'll be done. So first let's format this as a table. I can click anywhere inside of the range of cells that's going to be my table. I can click on Insert, so I'm in the Insert ribbon. I'm going to go ahead and click on Insert Table, so I click on Table, and whoa, it all of a sudden grabs this stuff. It says the top of the table has headers. Yep, these are my headers right up here. So I'm going to keep those, click on OK. It does make the perfect selection for me, so that's great. It highlights them, it changes them, that's looking good too. I'm going to click on pale green letters to have them show up. We can see that the numbers are 4 digits automatically. One of the things that would be nice, I didn't ask you specifically though, is if you double click, you can resize your rows here to make things look a little bit nicer. So that's great. We've got this is what it showed like in the Netflix one, but I didn't want you to format this. I said this is only not the values for this exercise. I just wanted to show how the formatting looks, and this is what we've got right now. If you did that, boom, you got this question entirely correct. And now let's move on to question number 5. And before we start question number 5, it'd probably be a good idea to save at this point. I'm just going to do a Command S to save. And it says use the retail worksheet to create a table so that your boss can understand and get a sense of Amazon's success and advantages of its largely internet-based model. The retail worksheet should be positioned to the right of the Amazon worksheet that you created above. So let's make sure that that's the case. Here's Amazon and here's retail. Perfect. So I'm going to click on retail so that we can see this. And we see we just have raw data in here. It's not as a table. So, and it looks like we've got everything organized by sales in here, but we also have number of stores that's in here as well. Looks like these are real numbers because there aren't B for billions afterward, but this is a billions figure. So good. We've got our top 30 firms, retail firms, organized by sales. So, all right, we got that data. What should we be doing with it? Let's create a table with headers from the data in the retail worksheet. You can keep the default blue banded format. So, all right, I'm going to click someplace into the table. We're going to go into the Insert ribbon. We're going to say Insert Table. It makes the selection. I want it to have headers. This looks solid. Click on OK. We can keep the default blue banded looking good. Next up, use the Excel table total row feature to add a total row and use it to total the sales column as well as the total number of stores for all retailers listed, and then resize the columns if needed. So, you know, there were some students that saw things show up like this and they're like, what do I do? This was really important for you to remember from our various different exercises, that when number signs showed up in here, that means that you've got to resize your table cells so all the data is in there, but you should definitely know what those number signs are in Excel and how to deal with them. So that said, we want to go ahead and make sure that we're using total rows in here. So if you clicked any place inside of the cell, what happens is you see the table ribbon. The table ribbon has lots of different options, including total row. And what total row does down here is it puts in a total row, and we can see it already totals up the stores. So if I click down in here, I can see I could pull down and change this, but I do want to have sum in here. And I also want to sum up my total sales. So if I click in the total row down here, again, I added my total row up here. I can go ahead and pull down, and I can select any of my major functions in here, or even add functions. I'm going to do a sum right here. Again, I get number signs. That's not looking good. But if I double click, it stretches it out, and I can see, oh, here we go. We've got 1.7 trillion dollars in retail. So hopefully everybody got that to work. Then it says sort the table by stores, the largest number of stores to smallest. Note it's important to do this before attempting to perform the calculations below. So to sort by store is really easy. Just click on the little down pointing arrow right here. You come up with this sort dialog box. I want to sort as descending. That means biggest to smallest. And I don't even need to click anything more here. I can just get rid of this box. And look, it's sorting from the largest number of stores, which is Yum Brands. That's actually Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and KFC, all the way down to, we see, Apple's got the smallest number, but look where Amazon is down here in the number 2 largest, but they're, it's one less than 27, so they're 26 out of 30 in terms of having the amount of stores, number of stores, so very, very few stores. So, all right, that's looking interesting. Then it says after we've sorted our stores, off to the right, we want to add a label in cell G2 that says Amazon percentage of sales. So let's do that in G2. We'll say Amazon percentage of sales. And and then let's go ahead and to the right of this cell in H2, calculate the percentage of total sales accounted for by Amazon sales. And format this as a percentage with 2 decimal points. So, all right, let's see. We're going to do this off to the right. If I start typing in here, I can see that it's going to be, I'm not going to be able to see what I put in here, so I'm going to resize my table value, or my the width of my column in here, just by double clicking when my cursor looks like this in between G and H, and I can see that this resized. And so now what I want to do is I want to calculate Amazon's percentage of the total sales. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say equal in here, so just equal, and then where are Amazon's sales? So here's sales, where's Amazon? Oh, that's in row 37, so if I click on C27, I should say, C27 shows up. And I'm going to divide this by, what I'm going to divide it by, I'm going to divide it by the total sales. And fortunately, this is included for me here. So I click on it, and even though this has got a weird sort of setup in here from the total value, if I press on enter here, I see I get the figure that I thought I was going to get. And if I want to convert this to percentage, I can just move back into H2, click on the percentage value, I can add 2 decimal points in here, and I can see Amazon is only is almost 7% of all industry sales. So, all right, that's kind of interesting. Or 7%, I should say, of the top 30. Now let's see what we want to do. We want to say, under the cells we've just add a cell with a text Amazon percentage of stores in G3, and then to the right of that in H3, we want to calculate the percentage of total stores made up by Amazon stores and format it as well as a percentage with 2 decimal points. So we're going to say Amazon, percentage of stores. And here we're going to say equals, and again, Amazon is down here in 27, so the number of stores is 490 there, and then I do a slash for division, and the total number of stores is 147,000, and I press enter here, and wow, that's a tiny number. So I'm going to click on my percentage here, and I'm going to add 2 decimal points. So even though Amazon is about 7% of the industry, they are 0.33% of stores. So we get an idea of the efficiency that they have. You can really see the scale economies of Amazon's business model playing out here, even though we don't have the exact number that they spend on sales. If we just use number of stores as a proxy, recognizing that it's expensive to have lots of stores, Amazon's warehouses are expensive. They're loaded with robots and tech and lots of people, but they are extraordinarily efficient. And so we can see that efficiency played out in these very sort of coarsely calculated numbers. But this is looking good. So great. We just finished with Amazon. Looking dynamite. That's question 5. I'm going to go ahead and save and then get ready to tackle question 6. So this exercise says, use the worksheet CPXB checkout for the next exercise. This sheet should be positioned to the right of the retail worksheet that you created above. So again, if we go ahead and take a look at our worksheet, we have CPXB checkout. I'm going to click right on it. Here we are. And we've got some stuff that's right in here. I don't need my formula builder anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that too. So I'm not seeing that. Make it a little bit bigger so everybody can see it. So let's see what we're supposed to be doing here. You're hired by your professor to create a checkout worksheet for the CPXB devices. The devices can be checked out from 10/1/19 and must be returned by 12/15/19, or the student will not receive a final grade, which is true. So make sure you give your devices back. Students from the 10 a.m. and 12 a.m. PM sections can both check out CPXBs, enter or set up the input validation for the checkout and returned column cells B2 through C21. So that's right from here. So we got B2 through C21, these ones right here. And the data validation should ignore blanks, okay? It should include only valid dates from the dates listed in cells F2 through F3. So, all right, we've got F2 and F3. Those dates are in there. Okay, so that's looking good. And it says, note, it's expected that the user can change the dates so that your professor can use this again in future semesters. The input message should be have the title date and the message saying, please enter a date within the valid range. And the error should say, alert for these columns should say error with the message, you must enter a valid date. So, all right. Here we are. I've made my highlight in here. And now to do data validation, remember how we go ahead and set that up. We're going to go over and we're going to click on the Data tab. We're going to click on Data Validation. We get this dialog box showing up here. And what do we want to allow? Well, we want to allow in here dates. So we select on dates. We said ignore blanks. And then this is what we want our date to be between. So I'm going to click on our start date here and then go over here and click on the start date. And then for the end date, I'm going to click here and go on the end date. Now, this is very important. I mentioned this in one of the videos. In fact, specifically, I emailed folks and said, hey, you want to pay attention to this because this is something that was different in one of the setup videos here. You've got to go ahead and set these so that these are going to be absolute references, because if they're not absolute references, what's going to happen is as you move around, the data validation will change for the different cells that you're typing in. So, and if you had a situation, you probably lost some points here if you didn't put the dollar signs in because your data validation only worked in the starting values here. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and either you can type in the dollar signs in front of it. That's what I'll do right now, because for some reason on the Mac, if I click in a value and I do Command T, it's not changing that. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in my dollar signs in front of F and in front of 3 to make those absolute references, and in front of F and 2 to make those absolute references as well. Just click right in there. Unfortunately, you can't move your cursor keys left and right too, so you really do have to click right in there, make sure it's good. And again, if you clicked and something's looking weird because you pressed a command key, remember you can just go ahead and highlight the stuff and backspace over it. So, all right, we've got this. We're ignoring blanks. Our input message should say date. And let's see, what did we want it to say? Please enter a date within the valid range. And then for our error alert, we should say up here, error, and the error message should be, you must enter a valid date. And then we've got everything set up here. So all three of our things are set up. And again, this is the big value here. Oh, my end date here. I'm not sure what happened, why the $ didn't show up. I might have accidentally pressed on undo in here. So, but I just double checked. I've got my $ in there. I click on OK. And here we go. We can see this shows up. Somebody had asked me, hey, is this supposed to show up in here? It absolutely is supposed to show up, because this is part of your date validation and your validation that you set up from B2 through C21. That's going to show these values in here that says, hey, please enter in a valid date. So that's looking good. If you've got that, outstanding. We got our input message or error message. Then it says set up input data validation for the section cells D2 through D21. So I clicked on D2. Drag down to D21. What should we do here? It says the data validation should ignore blanks and should create a drop-down list using section dates in F6 and F7. So here's F6 and here's F7. So all right, that's looking good. And the message should say section, please enter a valid section. And the other should say error alert, error. You must enter a valid selection from the drop-down menu. So all right. Let's go over here. We've selected our values for D2 through D21 as the question asked. We're going to click on data validation. Now, what do we want to do here? We want to do a drop-down list. So we have list as an option in here. It says ignore blank, and in cell drop-down is exactly what we want to create. And what is our source going to be? Well, I said use these cells here, F6 through F7. So I'm going to click on them and drag them down. So click in F6, hold the mouse button down, drag to F7, and we see I get an absolute reference range in here. So I don't even have to rechange that. That's looking good. Then for my input message in here, let's see, what did I want for the input message? It should say section, please enter a valid section. And for error alert, I'm going to type in error, and it should say you must enter a valid section from the drop-down menu. So you must enter a valid section from the drop-down menu. Click on OK. And we see what happens here is we get this, the selection message in here too, which we had expected. And look, it shows all the way down here. And also, so for section here, we can click on the drop down. We can see, yep, it enters that in right away. If we were to type in something wrong, like section 3, we're going to get our error message that shows up that allows us to retry in here. And we can go ahead and we can select another value in here, or just, type it in directly too. So we do section 4, 10 a.m. And whoops, let's see, it doesn't like the retry. How do we have to type this in exactly here? So 10 a.m. with no spaces in between. So all right, there we go. And it should be picking these off for the selections in the drop-down menu. There we go. So I don't know if there's a bug perhaps in this version of Excel, but it should allow the selection from the drop-down menu. And after we've got the values in there, it does. So that's looking good too. Let's see, what else do we have? Format the worksheet so that the example looks like the example below. I'd mentioned this in class. It doesn't matter the pale yellow that you have in here, but everything should look the same, and it describes exactly what this is. So all labels row 1 through F5 should be bold and italics. All right, row A1 through all of row 1 plus in cell F5. So we've got this down here. So this is the other one in here. So these guys should all be bold and italics. So that's all of row 1 plus cell F5, bold and italics. Great, we got that. And all values that can be changed are inside of a single column border and should have a background of pale yellow as shown below. So this is what they should look like in here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight everything that's inside of the range where I entered my data validation, which is and everything that can be entered in here. So that's from A2 down to D21. And again, you don't have any validation for student name because, the students can be just about anybody. But I do want to be making sure that I can go ahead and change the dates in here as well as the section names that are in here. So what I've done is I've option clicked. So I highlighted my first selection here, A2 down through D21, holding down the mouse button and dragging to the end. And now I'm going to hold down my command key, or it would be control key in Windows. And while I hold down that key, I'm going to click on F2 and F3. Then I'm going to lift up my mouse, and then I'm going to click on F7 and drag to F8. So that allows me to do a discontinuous selection. You could also do this one at a time. No reason why you couldn't do this one at a time, but this is a handy tip for you to have. And so what I'm going to do in here is I want to set this to pale yellow. So I'm in my home tab. I'm going to click on this thing that looks like a paint fill in here. And if you hover your cursor over, it just says fill color. And pale yellow, sure, that looks pale enough. That's fine. I said, don't worry about the paleness. And so that's all selected. And then also what we're supposed to do is put a border around all of the cells. So if we go down here and see the different borders that we've got, just do outside borders like this. Notice that it's got sort of the depiction inside to kind of show what the cells are like. So it's the border outside all the selections. So if I click on outside borders, boom, it puts them around all of them. And if you click off, you can see this looks magnificent, exactly how we wanted it to look. Let's go back over and see. Use what you know about limiting input so that only the cells that can be changed in your worksheet are the yellow cells within the borders. So this tells you what those cells are. We want to protect the worksheet. We should not use a password. And then part of the testing of the answer is going to be including dates and section names and have these new values work for entry once the data has been cleared from D2 through D21. So this is what I'm going to do in here. I'm going to get back in here. And remember, what we want to do is we want to set up our protection, our cell protection in here. So the way we set up cell protection, remember, it's a little tricky, but we did this. We even had exercise. Not only did you learn this in the book and you had your video for this, but we also had an additional exercise video there as well. So click on A2, drag down to D21, and I'm going to use my discontinuous selection trick. So on the Mac, it's holding down the Command key. It's Control on Windows. I'm going to move up here to F2, and now I'm going to click in F2 while I hold down the Command key, drag down to F3, let go of the mouse, but continue to have the key held down. Again, it would be Control on Windows, Command on Mac. Then while I keep holding the key down, I can click on F5, drag to F6, lift up my mouse again, and I've made the selection of everything in here. You could certainly do these steps, one selection, then do the steps, one selection, do the steps, one selection, do the steps. But if you make this discontinuous selection in 3 parts at once, like I've done here, we only need to do this one time. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to change cell formatting. There's lots of different ways we can change the cell formatting here, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right-click someplace inside of my selection. So if I right-click inside, I get lots of different options in here, and one of the options that I get inside is, let's see, Format Cells. So I click on Format Cells, and it's not especially intuitive in Excel that you have to go to Format Cells, but if I click on Protection here, it says by default everything is locked. So when I protect the worksheet, it will make sure that all these windows are closed, meaning you can't sort of enter and make changes. And so, you know, if you don't understand this, really go back and watch the video that I'd posted in the Excel 365 exercises, because it explains this very, very thoroughly. And that video is there for you to really help your knowledge. So if it's locked, you want to click to unlock the cells that you've selected. So again, we've just got the selection, the things that are in pale yellow. We'll click OK just to verify to see what happens. So if I click off of where I just unprotected some of those cells and I go back into look at format cells, I can see that the cell that I clicked off of that is locked. But if I go back again, I can see that the locked is going to be unchecked inside of here. So now what that's going to do is essentially by saying unlocked, it kind of opens the window when you lock the house to make sure that you can get in and you can change those different cells. So again, I've clicked inside where I unlocked the cell, or I clicked off of the lock option in here. So now it doesn't do anything because if I can type in this area that's supposed to be locked. But now watch what's going to happen. So I'm going to go over to review. And again, it's really important to repeat the exercises that we've done in class as you prepare if you don't remember where things are. So it's under review. There's not a tab that says, you know, protect worksheet. And you also want to pay attention to what you're clicking on up here, because there's protect workbook, which we don't want to do. We want to protect the worksheet. So I'm going to click on protect worksheet in here. We have our password optional. I said don't use a password. And we're going to allow the user to be able to select the locked cells, but they can't enter in them. They can select the unlocked cells too. We've set up which cells are locked and not locked. We'll click OK. So now let's see if I want to go down in here and I want to change things in this selection. I should be allowed to. So if I go down and select section 5, looking good. If I want to type in somebody's name here, like Lamore Freed, that's good too. What about her checkout date? What if we do a date that doesn't work? So if we do 8/1/19, we get an error in there. Oh yeah, so we can do that from, let's say, 10/15/19, And let's see, 12, if we try to do 16, 19, we're going to get an error. It's 12, 15, 19, so that's looking great as well. What if we tried to go over here? So look, it's not letting me tab over here, but if I go in here and I try to type something, it says, hey, what you're trying to do in here, this cell is protected. I can't make that change. So all that's looking good. What if I highlighted these values here and I cleared out what was in here? So I can go ahead and do that, clear contents. And I decided, okay, next semester, but I've been assigned, instead of section 4, section 5, I've been assigned section 3, and I can even put in the whole word there, section 6. So let's imagine that happens, and I can go up here and I can select on there section 3, and there's section 6. So we can see everything is working fine in here. As part of the correction, we also made sure that, the dates could be different. So let's see if we change these to 2020, because it's going to be next year. Make sure that you can go ahead and make those changes. And sure enough, we put in 2020 over here. And when did we check this out? So how about 10 119? No, it's not going to do that. Now it's 20, so we got to do 10 120, and we see we've got 12. If we do 16 20, that's not going to work because that's out of our range. 12 16 20. So whoops, 12 15 20. And so hopefully you can see this works. This is exactly how we wanted to set things up. You didn't have to put any data in here, but this is how we tested it. I hope you did well on the test, and if not, feel free to go through this again. And also know that there is going to be posted a video for the noon class too. So if you feel like you really need to double down, not only go through this, but you can also go through the exercises in noon, which are similar but different. So the context is different, but it uses the same techniques. So you can make sure that you really got stuff down. I would suggest that you go through the one in your opposite class. Good luck. Hope you're learning.